Yes, the three-pointed star is 1, 3 and 4 on the grid. Marcel Tiemens partners Alessandro Nannini in the number 10 car, while the experienced Roberto Moreno's been drafted in to share the pole position car of Bernd Schneider. Bernd has qualified 0.03 of a second quicker than JJ Leto in the championship-leading BMW McLaren. JJ and Steve Soper won from pole last time out, but here in Germany, Steve knows they've a real fight on their hands with those 3 Mercedes.
They've been testing, they've had a few weeks. We've been at Le Mans and we haven't been testing, and I feel that they've made some ground on us. I hope they haven't, but I feel they have made some good ground, and they're probably more reliable now.
The Gulf McLaren team have 3 cars on the grid once more, with Jean-Marc Gounon and Pierre-Henri Raffanel lining up 6th. GT champion Ray Belm again 6th this one out, so Andrew Gilbert-Scott, 15th fastest, has a new co-driver in the Swede Anders Olofsson. Even though the Hesselmans Lammers car got a bit hot, the 2 Works Lotuses are starting 7th and 8th. But historic racer Martin Stretton, having his first run in the championship with Andrea Baldini, struggled, and he'll start 24th. Porsche are even unhappier, despite the rules on air restrictors being eased in their favour. The 2 Works cars will start only 9th and 10th. Behind the Stuttgart mark is the giant-killing private McLaren of Chris Goodwin and Gary Ailes. After leading at Silverstone, their confidence is high.
Well, realistically, and the way that the team is working at the moment, we can be on the rostrum, because anything can happen in a 4-hour race. So that's what we're aiming for. We'll see what happens.
The 2 front-engined Panoz cars line up together on row 6. They've lacked power this year, despite a new Zytec engine management system. But Perry McCarthy and David Brabham are putting on a brave face.
We've got a strategy. It's Dave's going to try and take all 12 people in front of us before the first corner. Keep them back for the rest of the race. Should be a cinch. What do you think, Dave?
I agree with him. He just tells me what to do. I just do it. I mean,
flat everywhere, mate.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're starting a little bit further back than I'd like, but by the first corner I should be in the lead, so...
Great stuff. Well, for the German crowd, this is really a battle of manufacturers. BMW versus Mercedes versus Porsche. We're on the new, shorter Nurburgring, of course, using very little of the old 14.5-mile ring, but it's a daunting track nevertheless. A 4-hour race, it's overcast, we've got a slight threat of rain, and now they're on the rolling lap. The top GT2 qualifier is the Viper of Olivier Beretta and Philippe Gache. The Justin Bellmark Duez Viper qualified 3rd in that class. We've got 16 911 GT2 Porsches here on their home ground, but as they come down to the start-finish line, it's a clear start. Mercedes and McLaren 5 abreast as they go down into the first corner. Bernd Schneider is nosing ahead. There they are, in a great phalanx down into the first corner. Schneider on the right, Nannini on the left, and it's Schneider who's got through first. Schneider leads. Where's JJ Leto? He's in about 4th place. I think we've got Mercedes 1, 2, 3. The 3 Mercedes have engulfed the 2 white McLarens. It's Schneider, then it's Nannini, then it's Klaus Ludwig. JJ Leto is in 4th place. The other Peter Cox white McLaren is 5th. Then we've got one of the Gulf McLarens, the rest of the cars funneling around the circuit, and Schneider is indeed ahead. Alessandro Nannini locking up a brake, a little puff of rubber smoke. JJ Leto in 4th place trying to fight back Cox, and it's Jean-Marc Gounon in the Gulf McLaren who's in 6th place. Then Jan Lammers up in 7th place in the little Lotus. We've got Bob Wallach 8th. In 9th place, it's John Nielsen's McLaren. Remember, this is really 2 races in one, because the GT2 championship battle matters just as much. We've got all those Porsches fighting there, but it is a Viper at the head of that queue. I think it must be the Beretta Viper ahead of one of the yellow Marcuses, driven by the Dutchman Cor Oyser. Yes, there they are, the white Viper with its thick blue stripes, the Marcos right tucked into its boot lid, and then the trail of 911 Porsches pursuing it as the cars come round into the final section, brings them into the Coca-Cola curve, which is what the final hairpin is called. And the German crowd here at the start-finish line standing up to see 3 silver Mercedes, 1, 2, 3, leading. It's Schneider from Nannini, from Ludwig, then all the McLarens, JJ Leto and Peter Cox in the 2 white Schnitzer cars, then it's Jean-Marc Gounon in the pale blue and orange of the Gulf colours, and then Jan Lammers in the little yellow Lotus. He's ahead of Bob Wallach in the GT1 Porsche, but let's go back to the start. We're on board with Gary Ailes and the Parabolica McLaren. Ahead of him, it's John Nielsen and the Gulf McLaren as they go down to the first corner. The McLaren's moving across to the right, and look at that Lotus locking up. That's Girouard's Lotus locking up, and Hans Stuck giving a little nerf to Gary Ailes, who fights at the wheel, manages to keep the car straight. Hans Stuck moving ahead of him in that wide Porsche just ahead. And that's Luca Badoa's Lotus going all wrong over the curbs at the Vidal chicane. The car landing with a tremendous thump. Another Lotus in trouble. That's Sandy Grau in the Taiwanese entered Lotus, and he's pulling right off the circuit and seems to be destined for retirement. And already lapping the back markers are these flying Mercedes. Mercedes 1, 2, 3, McLaren 4, 5, 6. A great battle developing for 5th place between these two. That's Peter Cox in the number 9 McLaren. That's the white Schnitzer entry, and behind him the blue and orange Gulf McLaren driven by Jean-Marc Gounon. Both of these drivers using every inch of the road and some of the curbs in their battle, and the back markers are going to start to be a problem pretty soon in this race. It's a twisty circuit, and the little GT2 Porsches are already starting to get in the way. There's one of them with Cox going round it, getting a bit offline, getting very sideways, and that was almost Gounon's chance, but Cox managed to get the door slammed before they came through that long, tight right-hander which finishes the lap. Now they get on the start-finish straight, on down the hill towards the first corner. Now we see it again in replay, and the Porsche being lapped is on the racing line. Both McLarens have to go offline where it's very slippery. Look at Peter Cox sawing away at the wheel as he tries to keep the car pointing in the right direction, tries to keep the door shut on Jean-Marc Gounon. Now, this is Justin Bell, lying 3rd in GT2 in the Viper. He's battling with the British enter Jeff Lister, John Greasley, 911, going right over the curbs at the chicane himself, and that's not going to do these cars any good. If they keep running over the curbs, the Porsche managing to stay just out of touch of the Viper. We see it again. Now, look at this Viper taking off right up and bangs down once more. That must have done some damage, I would have thought, to the underneath of that car. Meanwhile, look at this battle for 3rd place, Mercedes versus McLaren. It's still Schneider first, it's still Nannini second. This is Klaus Ludwig in 3rd place in the red-mirrored Mercedes with the red-mirrored white McLaren on his tail of JJ Leto. That's the Justin Bell Viper in the pits, I think, probably looking at that damage as we ride with Gary Ailes in the Parabolica McLaren, working his way past the back markers. He's chasing up on the tail of one of the Lotuses, has a little look at the inside as they go into the chicane. It's Fabien Girouard, the Lotus, ahead of him as they go into the tight, long right-hander that takes them back onto the start-finish straight. The Lotus easing away. And Justin Bell rejoins the race. They've worked on that Viper as Alessandro Nannini's Mercedes goes by. And now we've got this battle for 3rd place. Mercedes, McLaren, McLaren. JJ Leto working hard through the traffic in the McLaren. Just in front of him, tantalizingly out of reach, he can see the silver wing of the back of that Mercedes. They're coming up now themselves to pass Justin Bell. Mercedes, McLaren, McLaren. Justin Bell gets a grandstand view as the two McLarens go by, pursuing that Mercedes. Great GT racing here at the Nurburgring. And they move away from the V10 GT2 Viper, goes storming down that back straight up to about 185, 190 miles an hour. Past goes the Gulf McLaren now. Justin Bell keeping well out of the way, goes over the curves once more. He's going to have to be careful not to get more damage. That's a little GT2 Porsche spinning just in front of the black Dams Panoz, which has to take enormous avoiding action. That's Eric Bernard in the black Panoz, entered by the French team. But meanwhile, the yellow mirrors on that Mercedes say that that's the leader. The leading GT1 car has just lapped the leading GT2 car. That's the Viper of Olivier Beretta. And certainly these Mercedes looking very smooth indeed on their home ground. And here still the battle of the McLaren. Still it's Peter Cox in 5th place. Still it's Jean-Marc Gounon in 6th place. They battle on despite the traffic. There's a lot of rubber on this circuit already now. It's getting more slippery. Headlights ablaze. These two McLarens. And Gounon has a little look at the inside. Gounon's going down the inside. He must get through. He doesn't. Or does he? Still side by side. The next corner is a right-hander that allows Cox just to ease away the Chamberlain-entered Viper, desperately trying to keep out of the way of these two battling McLarens. You'd think this was a 10-lap club race. That's one of the Panoz cars in the pits. They're topping up. What are they doing? The brake fluid, I think that must be. The brake master cylinder. Now, look, it's Peter Cox just fighting off the Jean-Marc Gounon car. Goes on the inside. They're side by side, and Jean-Marc Gounon's through. Jean-Marc Gounon forces his way onto that final right-hander and gets through and immediately pulls away from Peter Cox. We have a new fifth man, Jean-Marc Gounon. Tremendous effort. One McLaren passes another. And there's one McLaren off the road. That's Andrew Gilbert-Scott. Andrew Gilbert-Scott parking his Gulf McLaren. Can't see what the problem is. Has there been an accident? Has there been contact? We're going to see a replay. Over the curbs goes the McLaren and Klaus. That Lotus hits it very hard. The Lotus and the McLaren, I suspect, are both now going to be out of the race. The Lotus is Luca Badoa's, and yes, that is a very sorry sight. Luca Badoa out of the race, Andrew Gilbert-Scott out of the race, and Hans Stuck in trouble. That's the Hans Stuck Porsche GT1, moving very slowly indeed as the Nannini Mercedes comes in for a routine stop. There's Alessandro Nannini out of the car. Into the car gets Marcel Thiemann, and in comes the Andy Wallace Panoz once more. Andy Wallace getting out of the car. It's very, very hot in these cockpits. Very tiring to drive this front-engine car with the driver wrapped around with the exhaust manifolding. In gets James Weaver. And that's one of the McLaren spinning. Peter Cox has a spin. Peter Cox swaps ends as Gounon goes on his way. And down in the pits, let's hear from Andy Wallace.
For some reason, we had fluid leaking from the right rear wheel. And so I had to come in, change the caliper, I believe they did. Bled all the brakes. Obviously, when you do that in a hurry, you don't get all the air out, so it's fine now, it works, but it's a little bit spongy.
How would you like to race a Panoz round the Nurburgring with a spongy brake pedal? That's the other Panoz in the pits. That's the BRABHAM McCarthy car being worked on. And we're getting a replay. It's a Mercedes. It's the third-place Mercedes. Bernd Maylander in the Klaus Ludwig car, and he's off for the chicane. The car is spinning in the air across the gravel, and it's in the barriers. Oh, a big accident for Bernd Maylander. That's the third-place Mercedes out of the race. The Mercedes mechanics get the news. It's not going to be a Mercedes 1, 2, 3 today. Whatever happens, it's still Mercedes 1, 2. Here's Bernd Schneider through the back markers. Schneider off. Schneider elbowed onto the grass there by one of the GT2 Porsches, flashing his headlights. The car doesn't seem to be damaged. That was a nasty moment for him. We've got Bob Wallach rejoining in the GT1 Porsche. But meanwhile, Andrew Gilbert-Scott's made his way back to the pits. Let's hear the story of Andrew's retirement in the McLaren.
It's disappointing because they're going well, and the Lotus was retiring. It's going down the hill and had its indicator on the right indicator, indicating that it was obviously either in trouble or retiring. And a lot of the GT2 cars and everything was overtaking it into the chicane. I imagine it was doing in the region of 40 to 60 kilometres. I came down the hill at 260, and I turned into the chicane, and the Lotus went through the chicane, which obviously I was extremely surprised about. And that chicane, because you have to fly over it, there's very little control of the car, and obviously hit it and retired. So, you know, it was just a very disappointing finish, really.
So one McLaren out, but these two McLarens are still waging war over third place. The white Schnitzer car of J.J. Leto, the championship leader. The blue and orange Golf car of Jean-Marc Gounon fighting over third place. J.J. Leto working away at the wheel. He's got one of the little Porsches to pass. He passes him going into that final corner, and he's fighting the wheel. He's spun! He's spun! J.J. Leto spins! I didn't see if he had a little tap from behind from Jean-Marc Gounon. Whatever happened, Leto is in the gravel. He's trying to find a gear. Gounon's gone through into third place. He's found reverse gear. J.J. Leto back on the circuit. J.J. Leto goes. He's still fourth, but he's very unhappy. Mercedes 1 and 2, McLaren's 3 and 4. Is J.J. Leto still fourth after that incident with Jean-Marc Gounon? Gounon has already handed over to his co-driver, Pierre-Henri Raffanel. There's Leto out of the car, sliding into that awkward central seat goes Steve Soper, with Leto helping him with his seat belts. And that is Chris Goodwin waiting to take over from Gary Ailes. Their car now lying 8th. But let's hear from J.J. Leto.
JJ, we saw you spin. Can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, Gunnar just hit me in the back, you know. Very simple.
was definitely contact.
You know, it's not a place to spin, you know, without the hitting. It was so clear that he hit me in the back.
Well, now we can see a replay. The two McLarens are nose to tail. They're lapping the little Porsche. Gounod locks up his brakes, hits Leto, and spins him round. Let's hear Jean-Marc Gounod's version.
He knew that I was there, and when we had overtaken in a GT2 car, you go inside, and after he goes straight outside to take the corner, and I jump inside. But for sure, it was a bit too short. But I thought he knew that I was there, and I was quicker because I was.
Make of that what you will. I never did it miss. But Gounod's car, with Pierre-Henri Raffanel at the wheel now, is in third place. There it was, just ahead of the little yellow Lotus of Jean-Denis Delatraz, and they're now fighting over that third place. The Lotus has come through very well, and this is the Lotus coming into the attack. Once again, they're lapping one of those little Porsches. They go into the final corner. The McLaren moves across on the Lotus, and now it's Raffanel's turn to spin. And off into the gravel goes Jean-Denis Delatraz in the Lotus. And the Lotus's race seems to be run. But there is Jean-Marc Gounod walking away from his pit. He's going towards the BMW tent. Now, let's just have one guess as to who he's looking for. He's talking to JJ Leto. Well, that's looking like an explanation and I think an apology. And JJ Leto, I think, being pretty philosophical about it. JJ Leto, the consummate professional, there's nothing he can do about it. His car is still out there in the race. And in fact, there it is. Steve Soper now at the wheel, still in fourth place, but they have closed up on Pierre-Henri Raffanel after Raffanel's spin. Still the Mercedes, 1 and 2. Bernd Schneider will hand over to Klaus Ludwig because Ludwig's car is out, so Moreno isn't going to get a drive. Klaus Ludwig will now be Bernd Schneider's co-driver. Marcel Thiemann in the Sandro Nannini Mercedes in second place. Raffanel and Soper third and fourth. It's the Roberto Ravaglia McLaren in fifth place, and the yellow McLaren of Chris Goodwin sixth, ahead of the Porsche Nielsen McLaren, which is seventh. The Dams Panoz is eighth, and then the Lammers and Hesselmann's Lotus is in ninth place.
Yeah, the car's running well, we've got no problems. The tyres are lasting well, so no, it's good. Yeah, we got quite a good setup, I think. A little bit of oversteer, it's good.
Well, Chris Goodwin revelling with that yellow Parabolica McLaren, following behind one of the GT1 Porsches, which he's now about to lap. But significantly, the silver Mercedes with the yellow mirrors, that is our leader, with Klaus Ludwig now at the wheel. The Bernd Schneider Klaus Ludwig Mercedes in the lead. This is Steve Soper, and Steve Soper is right back up on the third place McLaren. Now we've got our battle for third place yet again with Pierre-Henri Raffanel and Steve Soper now battling, and they're side by side, and Soper goes through. Steve Soper takes that third place. He came charging back. I don't think Pierre-Henri Raffanel was expecting that. I certainly wasn't. Soper seemed to come from almost nowhere, and he's put that car back into third place, the third place it had before it was booted up the back by Jean-Marc Gounod, spinning JJ Leto off. JJ Leto got the car going, he handed over to Steve Soper. Steve Soper is now third, and instantly pulling away from Pierre-Henri Raffanel. Off goes one of the GT1 Porsches. That's Gerd Ruch's car. He's the third driver in that car, shared with Capelli and Baldi. Spins through 360, 720 degrees almost. The gravel going everywhere at the chicane. He's back onto the circuit, over the curbs. Look at the gravel on the road. So much of the gravel, which is on the sides of the road to slow the cars down when they go off, has now made its way onto the track itself. It must be very, very slippery there indeed. And Gerd Ruch still scattering kitty litter onto the track as he makes his way slowly onwards. I don't think all is right with that car. He's still driving it very, very slowly as the rest of the field go funneling by. In fact, he's a bit of a mobile chicane, is Gerd Ruch, trying to keep out of people's way as he scatters his gravel on his way back to the pits. There's one of the yellow Marcoses going past him, and Gerd Ruch making his way, I think, back to the pits with something that is obviously not right with that car. One of the yellow Lotuses coming up behind him now, storming by, going very much more quickly, and he can't stop. He goes straight on. Gerd Ruch off. Once more, that Porsche is in the gravel, and surely now he's going to call it a day. Meanwhile, the battle for third place still on. The McLaren battle. Steve Soper in third place in the white Schnitzer car. Pierre-Henri Raphael in the blue Gulf car in fourth place. And Soper's teammate, Peter Cox, right up there in fifth place, sitting behind all of them. The silver Mercedes with the yellow mirrors, that's the leader. And there he is, dominating this race, almost a complete lap ahead of this third place battle, with the second Mercedes a further half lap apart in second place. Mercedes, McLaren, McLaren, and now Raphael's efforts to close on Steve Soper are being very much thwarted, because he's got to defend his own place from Peter Cox. Peter Cox tucked right inside Pierre-Henri Raphael as they spurt flame from the V12 exhaust pipes of those BMW engines as they come down the gearbox for the tight chicane, away from the chicane, going on round the lap. And Peter Cox, the Dutchman, sharing this car with the Italian Roberto Ravaglia, both of them very experienced long-distance drivers, putting the pressure on Raphael. It's interesting that Raphael doesn't seem to be as quick as Jean-Marc Gounon, even if he also can say that he's not quite as wild. Now he's looking at the inside. Peter Cox under braking for the chicane, and he spins! They've both spun. Both the McLarens have spun. A great spurt of mud from the rear wheels of Peter Cox's car as he gets going, and the other one that's got going as well. Both those McLarens restart. They've both had a spin, and they've both restarted. That's how hard these cars are fighting. It may be a 4-hour endurance race, but every inch of this battle at Nurburgring is a fierce one. We're seeing it again as they follow Steve Soper in, almost side by side under braking. Peter Cox looking at the inside. He spins, he nudges Pierre-Henri Raphael. He spins quickly. Raphael goes off out of the picture, but he spins too. And look at that leading Mercedes, which had to go over the curves. We're seeing it from Schneider's viewpoint, and he sees the two McLarens tangling in front of him. He goes hard on the brakes, steers over the curves, because he doesn't want to jeopardize his lead with this battle of the McLarens nerfing him off. That's Perry McCarthy coming out of the pits. He's had a stop-go penalty, apparently for overtaking under a yellow flag. When a yellow flag's waving, you mustn't overtake. Perry did. They brought him in and kept him there while they could slap his wrists. And look at these McLarens still battling on. The leading Mercedes just ahead of them, but still, they both had a spin. They're still fighting on. Once more, we ride with Bernd Schneider. In front of him is the French-entered Dams Panoz with Frank Lagorce at the wheel, the black one. It's now in a creditable 8th place. And Lagorce is spinning. Lagorce has spun. Oh, Peter Cox so nearly hit him. Once more, a car spins in front of the leading Mercedes of Bernd Schneider. Schneider manages to avoid it, but that time, that was very nearly bad news for Peter Cox, who must have missed that car by about an inch. But he's restarted. He's kept his 8th place. We've still got Justin Bell. There he is, lying 3rd in GT2. But let's look at Bernd Schneider's eye view once more. He sees the Panoz spinning off to his left. He keeps close over to the right. Another of the Panozes has spun. That's Perry McCarthy's car, which is now limping into the pits. There's damage at the back of that car, and that won't be good news for David BRABHAM.
Unfortunately, we had a 30-second stop here that I had to do. And Perry just had a spin, and it hasn't been running very smoothly, but we've been learning a lot about the race for the next one.
That's the 4th placed Gulf McLaren in. Raphael getting refueled. He's staying in the car. Also coming in, the 2nd placed Mercedes. Nannini's done another stint. Thiemann is ready. And Raphael leaving. Oh, he's knocked the cameraman down. He's run over the cameraman. Look. He clouts the German cameraman. I think he's all right, but that is an occupational hazard when you're producing television programs from a crowded pit lane in an endurance race in the FIA GT Championship. Now that's the leading GT2 Viper, Philippe Gache and Olivier Beretta. They've led GT2 ever since the start of this race, but I don't think they're going to be leading it much longer. That car is absolutely creeping along. There's the German cameraman, he's okay, but Michael Caine of the Gulf team is not pleased with him, giving him quite a ticking off. And there's our new GT2 leader, Claudia Hurtgen in the Rook GT2 Porsche. Gary Ailes watching the race. Of course, his teammate Chris Goodwin is still doing well in that Parabolica McLaren. And some of the teams are wheeling out wet weather tyres. The weather looks threatening to me, but we haven't got any rain at this side of the circuit yet anyway, but they're prepared. Here comes Pierre-Henri Raffinel. We're seeing this replay. That's a mirror coming off. Mirror bouncing down the road. It's come off Pierre-Henri Raffinel's McLaren. I'm not surprised after some of the bumping that car's gone through. And look, there's a marshal running across the road. The cars are coming down over that brow at about 160, 170 miles an hour, but he simply kicks the mirror ahead of him as he runs across the road. The French entered Panoz is in the pits, still in 8th place. That's Eric Bernard and Frank Lagorce. And what about the GT1 Porsches? This is Bob Wallach and Yannick Dalmas. They're in 10th place, although certainly hearing the car come past me, I think that Yannick Dalmas is a bit short of gears in that car. He doesn't seem to have the full complement of gears in his gearbox. His teammate, Hans Stuck, with Thierry Boutsen in the other GT1 Works Porsche, they lost a lot of time earlier when the car ran out of petrol, and Stuck had to get it back into the pits by driving it on the starter motor. And you saw Wallach running a little wide there as he struggles with this car, which is clearly not as it should be. That's that Panoz that we were just looking at in the pits. It seems to have stopped altogether now. Meanwhile, the Mercedes still 1 and 2. There's the 3rd place McLaren. Steve Soper still doing an excellent job for JJ Leto. They're the championship leaders, remember, and Leto and Soper still in 3rd place, ahead of Cox and Ravaglia. And that GT1 Porsche of Wallach and Dalmas going very slowly now. Stuck, Hans Stuck in the other GT1 sweeping by. I think it looks as though the gearbox is finally completely shot in that car. It hasn't been a good day here at the Nurburgring for Porsche, or certainly not for the GT1 Porsches, although the GT2 Porsches lead, there are a couple of them, lead the GT2 category. There is our leading Mercedes, still going well, flashing his headlights as he works his way through the traffic of the little GT2 Porsches. Everyone in the Mercedes pit, everybody in the team, waiting and hoping that this first victory is going to come at last. That's Rocky Augustus Callaway Corvette, that's stopped, and off goes the 8th placed Collard von Gartzen Porsche, ploughing on as it regains the circuit. Clouds of earth onto the track, but they're going to press on, and still the McLarens battle on. Peter Cox, Roberto Ravaglia, Pierre-Henri Raffinel, Jean-Marc Gounon. These two McLarens have fought over 4th place, it seems, for the whole of the last 4 hours, and Pierre-Henri Raffinel's going to have another go at Ravaglia as they come into this final corner. The battle's going on between them. There's the yellow McLaren of Chris Goodwin, which is still pressing on just ahead of our leader as he starts his final lap. Bernd Schneider is just 1 lap away from victory at last for the Mercedes CLK. They've got the beer ready, but the team say no, let's start celebrating. There's still 1 lap to go as Bernd Schneider has to work his way through the tired traffic on a weary and slippery and rubber-strewn road. It's not over yet, but the checkered flag is not far away. He's in the last right-hander. He's on the final start-finish straight. The checkered flag is ready. Mercedes-Benz have won a GT race at last. Mercedes are 1st and 2nd, and what about this McLaren battle? Steve Soper takes 3rd place, and it's Roberto Ravaglia who is 4th. There's Justin Bell, he gets 2nd place in GT2. He'll be happy about that with the Viper. And now they're bringing the beer out in the Mercedes pit. There it is, the mechanics are now celebrating, and for the first time McLaren and BMW have been beaten.
Mercedes was really quick, you know, and we didn't really have chance. They have much more power than we have. We saw it already on the start, you know, that we couldn't really follow them at all. And it seems to be that they can really do good lap times during the race, and we are flat out all the time. So it's 3rd is the best we can do at the moment, you know, and we just have to keep on going and trying to, you know, finish in the podium all the time so we can get the points.
JJ not too happy after that impressive 1-2 for Mercedes. Ravaglia held off Raffinel for 4th, and once again those Parabolica boys were in the points.
To actually creep further up than where we are is really going to be very tricky. You know, we've climbed a fairly steep slope so far, but it really gets vertical from here on.
James Weaver finished 14th for Panoz, just behind teammate Perry McCarthy, who was penalised for overtaking under yellow flags.
Perry has got a 2-race suspended ban, and 5 minutes were added to the race time.
As a team manager, that must be so frustrating for you.
I think probably frustrating is a desperate understatement.
So, still no points for Panoz, but the gap is closing at the top of the Drivers' Championship. Bernd Schneider now just 12 points behind the two Works BMW drivers. And this is how the GT2 Drivers' Championship looks. Hertgen, Eichmann and Amarin extend their lead after their win, with Britain's Justin Bell well in touch after his second place. Today, though, well and truly belongs to Mercedes. They've been threatening to do this since round 1 at Hockenheim, and here at the Nurburgring, the CLKs have not only won, they've dominated. That podium is a sight that the German fans were looking forward to seeing. Well, while the winners start their celebrations, let's join Tony Jardine now for